Nigel.
I hate to announce this, but we do have another guest returning.
It's not my fault. This is not my. Well, maybe
why
it is
don't
my
anybody tell me anything?
This
about
could be my fault.
Just sit down. Have a seat, everybody. It brings me great pains to reintroduce, after a long and well-deserved absence,
Smelling them already,
Mr. Fanboy Y. Thank you, one and all. Hello, everyone. How have you been? I'm just kidding. I don't care.
Been better.
Of course.
Greetings and salutations, nerdkin. It is I, Fanboy Y, and I have sullied myself by descending into this cesspool of booze and vitamin D deficiencies to bring unto you both noise and funk alike.
Funk alike.
That's right. I am most humbled to bear the bowels of my very soul and introduce unto all of you the aptly titled Hypothetical Head Canon featuring Fanboy Y, who is me.
You used to have some music.
You can work on that in the off-season. Trekkies, brown coats, Star Wars nerds. Lend me your elongated Vulcan/Rhodian or perhaps Reaver-removed ears, for I present to you the following scenario. What if Darth Maul hadn't died in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace? Now, before you pelt me with incessant claims of fabled retcons and cybernetic ambulatory appendages, might I remind you that for all intents and purposes, after the cerulean blade of one young Mr. Obi-Wan Kenobi Esquire fanned itself through his very midsection, Darth Maul was absolutely considered dead by character, creator, and audiences alike. What with being cloven completely in twain, so punctuated by a poignant, if not gentle, waft of arterial spray. Correct?
Correct.
Exactly. Well, what if George Lucas had not chosen to introduce a villainous flavor of the week with each prequel film, only for all to be unceremoniously dispatched in undeniably disappointing devices and subplots? What if we had known that Maul lived when the credits rolled that day? What if we'd seen him injured, desperately reaching out to his master, only to be ignored and left for dead? What if we'd seen that hatred split between Jedi and Sith alike in real time, rather than simply have it revealed to us years later? Essentially, at the crux of the concept, gentlemen, what if Darth Maul had not been abandoned by the saga films? Would we have seen him develop as a tertiary subplot looking for twice the revenge and the power he believed he was entitled to? Would we have had even more respect for Palpatine's ability to puppet his giant plan on galaxy-wide domination, given he had not only had to maintain appearances to the Republic, but continually thwart the dark machinations of his former apprentice? Could Darth Maul have potentially become an inversed equal to Darth Vader of the original trilogy, having lost his position of power instead of gaining more, and seeking revenge on his master from the very start, and then ultimately failing rather than serving his master faithfully and then betraying him at the last minute? What if that final showdown on Mustafar wasn't a delicate glow-stick battle between Annie Pavlova and Mikhail Konobishnikov, but in fact was a battle of hateful wills between Maul and newly christened Darth Vader, with Maul intent on defeating the final figure that stood between himself and the ability to take his rightful place beside a neglectful master, while Vader was simply forced to swat at the fly, buzzing about his decades-bred hate comprised of isolation and fear. Imagine being Obi-Wan, arriving to find Anakin and Maul in the final strained throes of lethal combat, silhouetted by the glow of molten rock. Your very apprentice, who's fallen so far, who slaughtered men, women, and children alike, locked at the blade with a ghost, the very man who murdered your master, who you believed to be long dead. Imagine not knowing what to do, not understanding which victor would lead to darkness or more darkness. That is, until you feel the hand pulling limply at your tunic. And there she lay lying on the ground, on the landing platform, her eyes bulging and red, struggling to breathe through a crushed windpipe. Indeed, Padme lay dying. Even after the holo recordings you've seen back on Coruscant, you know this is beyond your apprentice's doing. Padme, you shout as you stoop and pull her upright, tilting her head back so she can breathe. What's Maul done? No, she wheezes as she fights for air, her nostrils flaring as if grasping at the ashy wind. It was Anakin. Your eyes immediately grow as hers appear to fade, her muscles going limp in your arms as consciousness slips away into the stifling heat. Unbeknownst to you, Padme had beaten you here in pursuit of Anakin. But when she'd confronted him about what he'd done at the temple, it tested his control, that she would be so ungrateful for such a sacrifice. And that, unfortunately, when Anakin had been at his weakest, is when Maul revealed himself. Anakin had simply slipped back into darkness as Maul stood motionless across the pad. Padme had seen the life leave his eyes, and she begged, pleaded even for Anakin to walk away, but Anakin knew, without even a word spoken, that this man would be his undoing, their undoing. But Padme is nothing if not persistent, and Maul's red blade, as it hissed to life, Anakin had to remove her from harm. With one deft motion, he used the Force to hurl her behind him, and she slammed into a wall. "Anakin!" she shrieked. Her renowned talents for self-control completely abandoned and replaced by blood-curdling terror. For a moment, he paused and cast his eyes back with concern, seeing her there, slumped on the ground, tremendous pain and struggling to stand. What had he done? But then a slow, bassy laugh grew from across the platform. Anakin's head spun again, finding the dark figure hadn't moved, but now he could see a toothy grin in the red glow of the figure's blade. Anakin's rage swelled faster than ever before, his gloves creaking as they tightened around his saber. There was nothing human left in him when two small hands clasped desperately around his shoulders from behind. "Anakin, no!" But it was too late. Before Padme could realize what had happened, she was pinned by her very neck against the warm, grease-stained durasteel of the landing pad. Looming over her, Anakin stood with one hand outstretched, as if grasping at the air between them. She tried to plead for her life, but she could neither breathe nor speak. And that was the moment when, for her, hope was finally lost. "I'm doing this for you! For us!" Anakin had cried. A mixture of anger and desperation spilled across his face. "Why can't you understand?" Padme felt blood vessels bursting in her skin as she struggled to answer. But that's when the dark figure decided he'd seen enough and began his charge. Anakin turned to meet his blade, and Padme simply collapsed, her heart and spirit finally broken. But as Obi-Wan, you hadn't seen all that. All you know was that Anakin had the blood of hundreds on his hands, including the woman he loved most. Anakin belonged to the dark side now, and that very dark side was fighting itself for supremacy before your very eyes. Ultimately, of course, Anakin will go on to win his battle with Maul. He would do what you, Obi-Wan, had failed to do, which is rid the galaxy of this menace once and for all. It wouldn't be the saber wounds or anything so superficial to finish Maul off. But when Anakin had gripped the Zabrik's exhausted body with the Force and held him aloft over a river of lava, allowing Maul to writhe in pain as he was slowly lowered into his fiery grave, well, that's when you know that Anakin would never return to the light. "Anakin," you'd cry. "It is done," would be the only answer. "Not like this, Anakin," you'd find yourself pleading. "We live our lives to adhere to a higher ground, not by allying ourselves with darkness." "What would you have had me do, Obi-Wan? I've sacrificed everything." Yes, you have," you'd answer while softly, briefly gazing back at Padme, "including yourself." That would be when you ignite your lightsaber. And that's when any sense of Anakin would permanently vanish from Vader's eyes. Well, I suppose that's what could have happened. But anyhow, that's my time, foils and foibles. I just wanted to pose that potential headcanon to you. What if Maul hadn't been just thrown away like yesterday's garbage? I'll take my answer offline. Thank you very much.
Interesting.
What about General Grievous?
That was
We wouldn't have all those hello there memes.
Hello there.
Hello there.
Why
So-
not? That happened like an hour and a half earlier.
I have a question. Is Fanboy Y related to Papa?
Boy, he really started sounding like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.